Hey everyone. In 11 days, one of the most consequential votes in American corporate history is going to happen, and almost nobody is talking about it. On May 27th, ExxonMobil shareholders will vote on whether to end 144 years of New Jersey history and make Texas the company's legal home. The board has already voted unanimously to recommend the move. The CEO has already told the Wall Street Journal exactly why. And on May 13th, ExxonMobil fired back at the New York City Comptroller and a major proxy advisory firm who are actively campaigning to stop it, calling their opposition politically motivated. This is not a dry corporate governance story. This is the largest oil company in the United States, a company that started as Standard Oil in 1882, drawing a line in the sand and telling the political establishment of the Northeast that it is done playing by their rules. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what ExxonMobil is doing, why the establishment is fighting so hard to stop it, and what this vote on May 27th means for every American who believes businesses should have the freedom to operate without being used as political pawns. So hit that subscribe button. This one goes deep. Let's get into it. Let's start with what is actually happening, because the framing you are going to hear from the mainstream media is completely backwards. This is not ExxonMobil abandoning its roots. ExxonMobil has operated out of Spring, Texas, a suburb of Houston, since 1989. 37 years. The company's leadership, its engineers, its operations, its daily decisions have all been made in Texas for nearly 4 decades. The only thing that stayed in New Jersey was a piece of paper, a legal filing, a corporate registration that has been sitting in Trenton since 1882, when John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil first put it there. So when CEO Darren Woods says Texas is already our operating home, and we think it makes sense to make it our legal home, he is not describing a dramatic departure. He is describing a correction that is 37 years overdue. The board voted unanimously on March 10th. The proxy statement went to shareholders. The annual meeting is May 27th, and if the vote passes, ExxonMobil will join Tesla, SpaceX, Dell Technologies, and Coinbase as major American corporations that have formally re-domiciled in Texas in recent years. The largest oil company in the United States is not leaving Texas. It is finally making official what has been true on the ground for almost 4 decades. Now here is where it gets genuinely interesting, and this is the part the establishment does not want you to focus on. Because if this were just a routine administrative filing, nobody would be fighting it. But the New York City Comptroller's office, run by Mark Levine, has sent letters to ExxonMobil shareholders urging them to vote against the Texas move. And the major proxy advisory firm Glass Lewis has also recommended shareholders oppose the redomiciliation. Their stated concern is shareholder rights. Under Texas law, they warn, ExxonMobil's board could theoretically pass a bylaw amendment requiring shareholders to own 3% of the company, which, at ExxonMobil's current valuation, would be approximately $19 billion, just to file a derivative lawsuit. Or requiring shareholders to hold $1 million in stock just to submit a proposal. They say this gives the board too much power. ExxonMobil's response, filed yesterday with the SEC, was direct. The company has made no commitment to use those provisions. It has not opted into either of the Texas statutes in question, and it pointed out that nearly 40% of its outstanding shares are held by retail investors, everyday Americans, and that action by written consent, the specific governance mechanism Levine is defending, has never once been used by ExxonMobil shareholders in modern history. Then ExxonMobil called Glass Lewis's recommendation ill-informed and called the Comptroller's campaign politically motivated. That is not the language of a company trying to appease critics. That is a company that has decided it is done being pushed around by Northeast political operatives, who have been using corporate governance rules as a weapon against businesses they disagree with ideologically. And to understand why ExxonMobil is so done with that dynamic, you have to understand what Texas has actually built. Because this is not just about lower taxes, though that matters. Texas created the Texas Business Court in 2024, a specialized venue designed specifically to handle complex commercial disputes quickly and efficiently. Texas passed legislation making it harder to file frivolous shareholder lawsuits against board members of companies incorporated in the state. Texas has built a legal and regulatory architecture that treats businesses as partners rather than targets. Compare that to the environment ExxonMobil and every other major corporation has been dealing with in the Northeast. New Jersey, Delaware, New York. These jurisdictions have become increasingly hostile terrain for large companies trying to run efficient operations without being dragged into endless politically motivated litigation. The New York City Pension Fund is literally spending money right now, money that belongs to city workers and retirees, to campaign against ExxonMobil moving its legal address from one state to another. That is the environment these companies are escaping, and ExxonMobil is not alone. ExxonMobil is the latest and loudest example of a trend that has been accelerating for years. Tesla moved from Delaware to Texas in 2024 after Elon Musk's compensation package was voided by a Delaware court in a decision widely seen as judicial overreach. SpaceX is incorporated in Texas. Dell Technologies redomiciled. Coinbase moved. And now ExxonMobil, 144 years after Standard Oil first registered in New Jersey, is joining the line. Here is what this means for regular Americans, and not just for shareholders and corporate lawyers. ExxonMobil employs tens of thousands of people in Texas. It pays billions in Texas taxes. It supports entire supply chains, communities, and small businesses throughout the Gulf Coast and across the state. When a company of this size makes its legal home in Texas, it deepens its commitment to that state, to those workers, and to that economy. Texas Governor Greg Abbott responded to ExxonMobil's March announcement by noting that the company has deep Texas roots dating back to 1911. He welcomed the move as further evidence that Texas's deliberate, sustained effort to build the most business-friendly legal and regulatory environment in the country is working. And it is working. Florida and Texas combined have absorbed over $1 trillion in wealth, corporate headquarters, and high-income residents from high-tax states over the past several years. Goldman Sachs is building an 800,000 square foot campus in Dallas. JP Morgan has more employees in Texas than in New York. Apollo Global Management is actively looking for a second headquarters in Florida or Texas. The financial capital of the world is moving south. And now the energy capital of the world is formalizing what has been true for 37 years. ExxonMobil belongs to Texas. Now here is the political dimension that nobody in the mainstream press is connecting. The New York City Comptroller is fighting this move on behalf of a New York City pension fund. Think about that for a second. A New York City government official, using public pension money belonging to city workers, is spending resources to try to stop a Texas company from being legally registered in Texas. And when ExxonMobil calls that campaign politically motivated, they are not wrong. This is the same political establishment that has driven Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Charles Schwab, Oracle, Tesla, and hundreds of other major companies to build their futures in Texas and Florida instead of New York and California. The same establishment that proposed wealth taxes that chased $1 trillion out of California before a single vote was cast. The same establishment that is currently watching New York City's credit outlook get downgraded to negative by Moody's, while proposing to raise corporate taxes on the exact firms that are already leaving. And now that same establishment is trying to use proxy advisory firms and pension fund letters to block ExxonMobil from doing something the company has every legal and moral right to do: move its legal address to the state where it actually operates, where it has operated for 37 years, where its workers live, where its future is being built. Darren Woods said it simply and clearly to the Wall Street Journal: Texas is already our operating home. We think it makes sense to make it our legal home. That is not a radical statement. That is a straightforward business decision made by a CEO who has watched the Northeast political establishment treat his industry and his company as an ideological enemy for years. And on May 27th, ExxonMobil's shareholders are going to vote on whether to let that correction finally happen. The board is unanimous, the CEO is clear, and the only people fighting it are the same political operatives who have been using corporate governance rules as a weapon against businesses they disagree with for years. Let's bring this all the way back. 1882, Standard Oil registers in New Jersey. 1989, the company moves its operations to Texas. 2026, the board votes unanimously to finally make the legal address match the operational reality. And the New York City Comptroller calls it dangerous. Here is the bottom line. ExxonMobil is not abandoning anything. It is correcting a 37-year mismatch between where the company actually lives and where a piece of paper says it is registered. The fact that this correction is being treated as a crisis by Northeast political operatives tells you everything you need to know about why companies keep leaving. When your government fights a business just for trying to align its legal home with its operational home, you have already lost the argument. Texas did not win ExxonMobil by accident. Texas built courts, reformed laws, and created an environment where businesses are treated as partners. And in 11 days, one of the most iconic companies in American history is going to make that partnership official. I want to hear from you. Do you think ExxonMobil is right to make this move? Drop it in the comments. If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss what is coming next. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop following the money. I'll see you in the next one.